You won't believe this story. It started like an ordinary Tuesday. Middle school, third period, history class. The teacher, Mr. Douglas, was the kind of man who loved control. Sharp suit, glasses perched on the edge of his nose, voice dripping with sarcasm. He loved being the smartest in the room. In the back row sat Jamal, a quiet black boy, 13 years old, thin, with big, thoughtful eyes. Jamal didn't speak much in class, not because he wasn't smart, but because he'd learned early that his words weren't always welcome. He'd grown used to the microaggressions, the subtle digs, the way teachers looked past him when hands were raised. But today, everything changed. Mr. Douglas was lecturing about government jobs, asking students what their parents did. Amanda, your dad's a lawyer, right? Michael, yours is a dentist? The room was buzzing with the usual chatter, kids proud to share. Then Mr. Douglas's eyes landed on Jamal. And you, Jamal? What does your father do? Jamal, quiet but steady, raised his chin. My dad works at the Pentagon. The room fell silent for half a beat. Then came the snickers. Mr. Douglas raised an eyebrow. Oh, the Pentagon, is it? Jamal nodded. And what exactly does your father do there? Mr. Douglas asked, voice tinged with mockery. Jamal hesitated. He's in intelligence. Now the laughter rippled louder through the room. Kids elbowed each other, eyes wide, grinning. Mr. Douglas chuckled. Intelligence? Well, that's quite a claim, Jamal. Are you sure you're not just telling stories? Jamal's face flushed hot. He clenched his fists under the desk, heart pounding. He knew the looks, the tone. He'd heard it before. The disbelief, the assumption that he was lying, exaggerating, trying to sound important. I'm not lying, Jamal said quietly. Mr. Douglas smiled thinly. All right. Let's get back to the lesson, shall we? But here's the thing. Jamal wasn't making anything up. His father, Major Marcus Johnson, was a high-ranking officer at the Pentagon, one of the sharpest military minds in national security. He'd spent years traveling the world on classified missions, advising generals, briefing top leaders. Jamal didn't know the details. He wasn't allowed to, but he knew one thing. His father was the real deal. And Marcus Johnson? He was used to people underestimating him, used to walking into rooms where he was the only black man in uniform, where people questioned his authority, his intelligence, his right to be there. He'd learned long ago to let his work speak for itself. So when Jamal came home that day, shoulders slumped, eyes red, and told his dad what happened, Marcus didn't react with anger. He listened, quiet and focused. Then he placed a hand on Jamal's shoulder. Son, he said softly, I think it's time I visited your school. The next morning, Jamal walked into school, heart hammering. He didn't know what his dad had planned. All Marcus had said was, Don't worry, I'll handle it. The bell rang. History class. Jamal slipped into his seat, head low. Mr. Douglas strutted in, all sharp smiles and fake charm. Good morning, class, he said, tapping the board. Let's get started. The classroom door creaked open. Everyone turned. And there, filling the doorway, stood Major Marcus Johnson. Full military uniform, polished boots, medals gleaming, shoulders broad, posture perfect, presence unmistakable. He wasn't just Jamal's dad. He was a force. Mr. Douglas blinked, caught completely off guard. Can I help you, sir? Marcus stepped inside, his voice calm but commanding. I'm Major Johnson. I believe you spoke with my son yesterday. The room fell silent. Jamal felt his cheeks burn, both embarrassed and proud. Mr. Douglas forced a laugh. Oh, yes. We were just having a little discussion. Kids sometimes, exaggerate. Marcus raised a hand, silencing him instantly. I don't appreciate anyone calling my son a liar, he said evenly, his eyes locking onto Mr. Douglas with quiet intensity. And I especially don't appreciate it in front of a classroom full of students. Mr. Douglas swallowed hard, suddenly aware of just how small he seemed. The students watched, wide-eyed, holding their breath. Marcus continued. My work at the Pentagon is classified, but what's not classified is the respect my son deserves. He's a bright, hard-working young man, and I won't have anyone making him feel less than. Jamal's heart swelled. His dad wasn't yelling, he wasn't threatening. He was just undeniable. Mr. Douglas stammered. Of course, Major Johnson. We were only... Marcus smiled slightly. Good. I'm glad we're clear. When Marcus left, the classroom remained frozen for a few long seconds. Then, slowly, heads turned toward Jamal, and for the first time, no one snickered, no one rolled their eyes. Instead, Jamal saw something new: respect. He sat a little taller, feeling the weight of something shift inside him. That night at dinner, Jamal grinned across the table. Dad, you were amazing. Marcus smiled, ruffling his son's hair. Son, remember this. You never need to prove yourself to anyone who doubts you. But sometimes, just sometimes, it's worth showing them exactly who you are. The next few days at school were like walking through a different world for Jamal. People looked at him differently, not with pity, not with suspicion, but with a strange new mix of curiosity and quiet respect. The boys who used to whisper behind his back now avoided his gaze. Some even nodded at him in the hallway, small, awkward gestures that said, "We were wrong." Even Mr. Douglas toned himself down. He called on Jamal more in class, not with sarcasm or challenge, but with actual interest. Jamal felt the shift deeply. For the first time, he realized what his dad had been teaching him all along. Real power doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to threaten or push or brag. Real power is the quiet, unstoppable confidence of someone who knows their worth and doesn't let anyone take it away. At home, Marcus sat on the porch with Jamal one evening, the sun setting in streaks of gold and pink. Proud of you, son, he said softly. Jamal looked up, surprised. For what? For holding your head high, for knowing when to let me step in, but also for knowing that you have your own fight to fight. Jamal was quiet for a moment, then asked, Did you ever have to prove yourself, Dad? Marcus smiled faintly, eyes distant. Every day. In the military, in life, in rooms where I was the only black man at the table. People doubted me, underestimated me, thought they knew my limits. But here's the secret, son. You let your work speak. You let your results speak. And sometimes, when it's necessary, you walk into the room and remind them exactly who you are. Jamal nodded slowly, feeling those words settle deep in his chest. By the end of the school year, Jamal was no longer the quiet kid in the back. He was confident, active, joining clubs, stepping into leadership roles, not because his dad had saved him, but because his dad had shown him the blueprint for holding his own. The story of the day Major Johnson walked into class spread quietly through the school, taking on a kind of legendary status. But for Jamal, the real legend wasn't about a dramatic moment. It was about the deeper truth that followed, that you are never defined by others' doubt, that your worth doesn't shrink because someone else refuses to see it, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stand tall, smile, and let them see the strength they were too blind to recognize. Thank you for watching and subscribe to our channel.